Hey, what is up everyone? In this video we're going over the top 10 worst updates in Sea of Thieves. So last week we went over the top 10 best updates. This week we're going to focus on really just the worst updates we've had in the game. And when I say that, it's not meaning that these were all terrible updates. They could just be stuff that were either was boring content, was stuff that was kind of pointless to add, or just other things like that. So not all of these updates are going to be stuff like I absolutely hate them or anything like that. So just kind of want to get that out of the way before we start. So starting off at number 10, we have Season 7. So Season 7 was the whole big captaincy update, and I think there were a lot of problems with the Season 7 update. Probably wouldn't have made the list if it wasn't for all the messy bugs that we had problems with when the season came out. The game was just basically unplayable for any of the new features for a good month or so when the season first came out. So it did get better later on, and there was a lot of interesting new mechanics and systems added with Season 7 with the whole captaincy stuff. But also, another reason why I kind of put it on this list is because as time has gone on, I've grown to resent Season 7 a little bit because it feels like it was really more of a money grab season, and you have to kind of look at the Emporium after Season 7 to kind of understand this. So Season 7 brought in captaincy, and it was cool because it was bringing in all these different new cosmetics and all that kind of stuff, like these new different types of cosmetics with the ship crest and the, able to change the captain's chair and the table and the bed and all that sort of interesting cool things. Then we got ship banners, really good stuff, and I was excited for it. But then if you notice in the Emporium started racking up a lot of this new cosmetic stuff, and there's not really anything that's been added to the main game that you can just earn with gold or whatever. They added a few more things when we got Season 8 for the two new factions that we got. Season 9, I don't recall anything getting added for captaincy, and I don't really see that changing going forward. So as I kind of reflect back on Season 7, it really feels like it wasn't meant for something cool to be added to the game or something for us players to really enjoy. It was really just another way for them to monetize us. So I have a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth from Season 7, but in general I do like captaincy and all that stuff. Moving on, let's get into number 9 with Season 2. So Season 2 is another one that's kind of like Season 7, where it wasn't technically like a bad update in terms of like the content that we got. It was more just like with Season 2, we didn't need it, and honestly I didn't really enjoy the content that we got. So with Season 2, the big thing was the Fort of Fortune. And the Fort of Fortune is an interesting idea, but the problem with it for me is it's kind of similar to The Force Awakens, where you have just another Death Star. We already had Skull Forts in the game. We had the Fort of the Dam, which is amazing. It's one of my favorite updates that we've ever gotten, which you can see in last week's video. The Fort of Fortune just didn't do anything that was unique enough in my mind to warrant it being added to the game. It really is kind of like Star Wars, where you have The Force Awakens, where it's basically the same as A New Hope, but just like quote-unquote new. And for me, I would have much rather seen something actually new come into the game. Season 2 did come out with some other stuff that was interesting, like the trade routes and the commodities and stuff. Those were interesting, but I feel like it was more of like a short-term addition. I don't really see anyone talking about it or doing them after that season came out. A little bit of a dud, in my opinion. Moving on, we have our current season with Season 9, and Season 9 is another one where it's not a bad update, but it's just really boring. Season 9 was kind of meant to be similar to how Season 5 was like a culmination of a bunch of little updates all together to make up a whole season. But the difference is with Season 5, they were more interesting like changes as opposed to what we got with Season 9. With Season 9, it was more back-end stuff, where it's like, okay, the fog will now actually appear. We'll have stuff like the Fort of Fortune was a bit reworked. We have more Megalodon and Kraken spawnings, that kind of stuff. So yes, the game changed a lot with Season 9, but it wasn't a change that you could really see or play with. It was really just the same game with a little bit of tweaks. Whereas like, say, Season 5, which was somewhat of a similar update, That had a lot of new stuff with like the bearing mechanic, fireworks, the storage crate thing I think is a huge one, where you basically can go up to any barrel and just hold the button and it'll take all of the stuff out of the barrel or put it into the barrel depending on what action you choose. So that's why Season 5 worked in my opinion as opposed to Season 9. Moving on to our number 7 spot, we have the Ashen Winds update. I have never liked the Ashen Lords in the game. It's not because they're difficult or anything, they can be a little bit challenging. I think they would be a little bit better if you didn't have to worry about your ship being destroyed every time they have like the volcanic rocks coming down from the sky. That's, I think, probably the worst part about the whole thing. Other than that, you know, the boss is like, you know, has some unique moves and stuff, but it's never been something that I was interested in doing. I will say though, and now I talk bad about the Season 2 update, I think the Ashen Lords work a lot better with the Fort of Fortune than they do with the Ashen Winds event. And honestly, I feel like they should just get rid of the Ashen Winds world event and just keep the Fort of Fortune as it is. Because really, it doesn't make sense to fight the Ashen Lord during the Ashen Winds when you could do it during the Fort of Fortune and get far more rewards than you do with the Ashen Winds event. So enough talking about that. Let's move on to our number 6 spot with the Legend of the Seas update. So the Legend of the Seas update was a very minor update, which is why it kind of made it on this list. Really what it did was added some cosmetics to the game. We had got tattoos that were added in this update, and you basically could unlock them by doing different combinations like that. We also got the Tombs of Fire, which basically lets you unlock different Ashen rewards. So stuff like the Ashen Dragon like equipment or the weapons and stuff like that. We also got Reaper Bounty chests in this update, which I didn't realize until I started making this video, but that's pretty cool that we got the Reaper Bounty in this update as well. So this update wasn't bad or anything, it just didn't have any gameplay changes with it. It's mainly cosmetic based except for the Reaper Bounty chest, which is cool, but it's not that big of a change in terms of gameplay. For me, I am not the biggest fan of this update. Moving on to our number 5 update, which is Cruise of Rage. So Cruise of Rage really was one of those updates where, unlike the previous update we talked about, this one did have gameplay changes, but it was gameplay changes that no one cared about. So this update brought in a new skeleton fort in the Devil's Roar. Now, if you don't know already, the Devil's Roar is a really cool region in the game that no one goes in. It's kind of sad because it's a cool place and environment inside the game, and it was one of those very early on big updates. The problem is no one really likes it because of dealing with the geysers that pop up and just other things that happen, which makes it not a fun place to have that long an experience in. So when you add a skeleton fort inside this region that has all those same problems, no one's going to want to do it. The other problem with this fort is that because of where the Devil's Roar is, this was basically all the way on the very edge of the map, away from everyone. So if you saw this fort active, you're most likely not going to try to go for it because it's just so far. I think I've only ever seen one person ever attempt to do this fort, which I stole their treasure by the way. It's just never really used. I also don't really see it active that often. I could probably count on one hand how many times I've seen that fort active in the game. So I don't even think Rare really cares about this update as much anymore either. We did get some other stuff. We got the Tombs of Resurrection that kind of expanded more of those Ashen Dragon rewards that we talked about in the previous update. We also did get the Chest of Rage in this update, which is a cool curse chest. You have to basically keep water on it so that it doesn't explode, and it is cool for in terms of ship combat and other stuff. You could either sneak up on a person's ship and try to put the Chest of Rage somewhere hidden on that where it can light up their ship with fire, or for yourself, if you're carrying this chest and you're fighting, you have to really be careful of making sure that you keep water on the chest, or else you could lose your battle just because the chest exploded. There's some cool mechanics with it. I don't know if the reward matches how much effort it takes to transport it, but in general I think it's a pretty cool chest. And we also got Ashen Skeletons, which I didn't realize until now that Ashen Skeletons didn't get added to the game until this update. I would have thought Ashen Skeletons came in when the Devil's Roar area first came out, but they didn't. So that's another cool thing with this update. Moving on to our number 4 update with Smugglers Fortune. So this one has to be on the list. Honestly, it could be a little bit higher maybe, but but this is kind of similar to what I had problems with Season 7, and it's not only cosmetic based, but it's also microtransaction based. To be clear, I don't have a issue with microtransactions in games in general. I do think there is problems with how they're implemented, but if your update is completely surrounded by, just making more money from the player, I'm not going to really like it much if you don't have any gameplay content to go with it. Smugglers Fortune really only added 2 things into the game, which is the Pirate Emporium as well as the black market. And the black market was stuff that you could buy with doubloons or gold from Duke. That is gone now. They got rid of the black market, which really sucks because the black market could have been a really cool concept. So the only thing that's really survived from this update is the Pirate Emporium. I think it's kind of self-explanatory why this is not a good update. Not only does it have no real gameplay effects with it, but it's also not even cosmetics that you can earn in the game. It's cosmetics that you have to buy with real money. Those are the problems with it that I see. So now we're starting to get towards the end of our list with number 3, the Sunken Curse. So the Sunken Curse is similar to like the Chest of Rage update, where it's a feature that still exists in the game, but no one really cares about no one really does it. And honestly, it's not like fun. I don't really get the point of wasting time on making this kind of stuff. Even if it's like small things, why waste the time on making stuff that no one really cares about and is like not fun to do? What this is basically all those mermaid statues that you see in the game. That's what this update is. It's just you basically go up to the mermaid statue, you try to hit your sword with it while it basically does damage to you, and then you get a gem from it. Pretty lame in my opinion, so that's why it's up in this top 3 spot. But at least the Sunken Curse did bring in something new to the game. I can't say the same for our number 2 spot, which is the Lost Treasures. So with the Lost Treasures, this update didn't really add anything to the game, but I do give it a little bit of slack because it was basically sandwiched in between 2 really big updates. And this was back when we had monthly updates, so there wasn't really much downtime that you could have in between updates in terms of making new bigger things, as opposed to with like the season system where you have 3 months, or you're supposed to have 3 months. Obviously we're seeing with season 9 that we're having basically half a year or more to have the season. But that's why I give a little bit of slack to Lost Treasures, because it was basically sandwiched in between the Haunted Shores update, which brought in the ghost ships and the ghost fleet, as well as afterwards we had the Ancient Vaults. So 2 really big gameplay updates. So that's why I give a little bit of slack to Lost Treasures, but it's still going to be on this list because it really didn't add anything in terms of gameplay or much in terms of anything really. What it did do was it brought a lot of time limited events, which was cool. We had stuff like the Hunter's Hall, we had Reaper's Rewards, and then probably my favorite, which was the Belated Bonus, where you could unlock parts of the State of Decay ship. So that was pretty cool. It's a nice looking ship. There were some other things that were added. I think the biggest in terms of gameplay changes that was added in this update was that they changed Tall Tales to have checkpoints, which I think is a huge thing. I think they should do checkpoints more often for other stuff, but I really did like that they added checkpoints to Tall Tales, because I think that helps a lot, especially for those that either get attacked during their Tall Tale or something happens. So that covers Lost Treasures, but now we move into our number 1 spot for the worst update in Sea of Thieves, in my opinion, and that is Skeleton Thrones. So Skeleton Thrones is another update similar to the Sunken Curse, where it was very early on after the game launched, and basically what this update did was it just added these thrones across the Sea of Thieves world, and you basically had to go find them, shoot up to them like with a cannon or something, sit down on them, and that was pretty much it. You got like a little accommodation for each of them. I don't even remember if there were any rewards tied to it. From what I'm looking at, I can't really see anything for it. If there was rewards that tied to it, let me know. But from what I could tell, it was basically just you got some doubloons for it, which really sucks, honestly. And also, I think one of the things I find really annoying with Skeleton Thrones is that you can't even finish them unless you get another crew to sit with you and do them. Say if you wanted to 100% complete the game, maybe you're starting out from scratch now, or you just started within like the last year or 2, you probably won't get the Skeleton Thrones combination complete unless you find someone really nice in the game that will come sail around that world and, do this with you. Because I think it's really dumb that like half the thrones you have to get another crew. You can't even just get like someone in your own party to do it with you. You have to find an entirely new crew to come and sit with you and stuff. So I don't really find that enjoyable. But in terms of, you know, kind of challenging people to like take the cannon and shoot off and like sit in a throne and stuff, like on different places, it can be fun. But in terms of all the updates that we've had in Sea of Thieves, this is the one that I think is the worst. But that covers my list of the worst updates in Sea of Thieves. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I did go over the top 10 best updates in Sea of Thieves. So definitely check that video out if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this video though, it'd be great if you hit the like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments below, what do you think is the worst update in Sea of Thieves? Was it one that I had on this list, or was it one that I didn't mention? I'd love to hear it down there. But until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Bye y'all.